Whether you're fly fishing in a stream, getting those ankles wet, or deep in the ocean casting nets, fish nerds, fish nerds, fish nerds, it's a podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Fish Nerds, a show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Groves, Chief Executive Fish Nerd, licensed fishing guide, and your best friend. We talk about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm joined by my co-host, the crappie hippie. Hey, John King.
Hey, Clay Groves. Good to be here. Good to be here. I'm sitting here in Glasswater World Headquarters Podcasting Studio talking to the man himself. This is John King, the crappie hippie, your tree-hugging redneck from eastern Kansas and co-founder of Glasswater Angling, lead-free fishing. Clay, how's it going with you this morning?
Oh, it's going really, really well. I'm a little bit tired, but I'm good. Vacations take all your energy away. Like you think you're going to relax, you come back from vacation, you're tired. So.
Yeah, and yet if you do one of those staycations where you just decide, hey, I'm going to just stay around and rest, then you get major FOMO because you get that depression on the last day or two where you're like, I should have done something. I've missed out, you know.
Right. No regrets, though. I went down to Folly Beach, South Carolina, one of my favorite places in the world. And it's a hippie beach right outside of Charleston. It's where Bill Murray lives. And it's a hippie beach town. You'd love it, John. It's up your alley.
Heck yes.
Yeah. Right up your alley. And with good fishing, usually. Usually.
Fishing and hippies, it's what I'm all about. I'm surprised such a place exists outside of my mind. So now I want to go there.
You love it. You love it. Fishing is so much fun. There's so many places to fish, people to talk to. So we're going to go down the list of what's happened today's show. Then we'll talk about what's been happening with us. Big show for you today. We're going to do an audio journal of my trip. I did one day of my trip. I did a full sunrise to sunset fishing trip on a pier in Folly Beach. We'll play that for you. Then we're going to roll into fish in the news. Got some good stuff for you there. And after the news, you've got an interview with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods. Is that right?
I do have an interview with Joe Henry from Lake of the Woods. He is the executive director of Lake of the Woods Tourism, and he is an activist and an advocate as well. Mm-hmm. And we're going to have a little story in fish in the news and then a little follow-up with Joe.
That'll be really good. And my kid, Blu Jay, who does not eat seafood, really wanted to try cooking crab rangoons using real crab. Blu Jay has figured out how to make crab rangoons with fake crab meat. And since we're in a place of blue crab, asked me to catch a bunch of blue crab so they could put together their culinary delight of crab rangoons. And I did have one fish we ate, and I'll talk about how we cooked that later as well. I cooked a whiting, which we'll talk about right afterwards. So lots to talk about on today's podcast. So why don't we jump right in? How you been? How's business?
Business has been really good, and we are back, and we are caught up almost. Order turnaround is back to the usual 1 to 5 days. I put crappie dealers on sale, just like I said I would. So the crappie dealer regular tail and the big bite tail are on sale for $382 in May. Actually got out and went fishing yesterday with Tommy, and he manages this little, it's a big pond.
Well, before you tell that story, you just teased up a deal on your glass water stuff.
Oh, that's right.
And what's the website?
Yeah. One day I'm going to get this, Clay.
Right. It's important. People got to know where to buy the things. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's that business 101 stuff that I'm
how do I buy it?
ever so good. Yeah. How do I buy it? Crappie hippie, you guy, you. Go to glasswaterangling.com. And there's a big, just scroll down and there's all the different products we carry. Hit the crappie dealer big bite, and you can get one for 10 to 15% off in May. And it's a great time to have them because guys are catching smallies, they're catching crappies, they're catching enormous pike and all kinds of stuff. It's a great bait for your finesse fishing, for that springtime fishing when a lot of the forage is small. It's just something you got to have in your tackle box. I hate to blow my own horn, but by golly, we sure do have a lot of fun with those things, and our customers do too.
They sure do. They're fun. All right, cool. Now you can talk about your fishing trip.
Well, Tommy had me, wanting to go. He was going over there. He manages this little lake for this lady. And
where is this in Kansas?
Well, it's just outside of Gardner, Kansas, which is the little town down the road from me. And Tommy's out of Baldwin, which is a little town to the west of me. Anyway, he swung by said, "Hey, give me another chance." He said he swung by, rescued me from my ongoing entrepreneurial craziness for a few hours. Anyway, we went over there and just had a ball. We caught 60 some bass and just had a lot of fun doing it. And since I hadn't talked to Tom in way too long, months and months and months, it was great to catch up and all that kind of stuff. So, and it was yeah, I'll go ahead.
And you caught fish.
We caught fish. We got like 60 bass. We kept
60.
60.
I've never had a bass day like that in my life. That's amazing.
Well, that's our record over there is 70. 1/4 of July we went in there and we caught them all on top water too, which was
even better.
crazy.
Oh, so fun.
Yeah, and this lady that runs it or owns it rather is I don't know. She's a vegetarian, kind of a hippie type. She doesn't fish. She just likes to watch the ducks paddle around on it. But so she's asked Tom, "Hey, come on over, keep an eye on it, catch some fish out of it so they don't stunt and so it stays healthy." And by golly, we're ready to be heroes in that scenario. I can certainly go over and help somebody thin out their pond every now and then.
Oh, good. I'm down for that too. That's perfect. And so you ate some.
We're going to eat some. I cleaned them. I was too tired to make a fancy dinner last night, but that's going down tonight.
Good.
And I think this is good payback for me, since you can ask Jeff, you can ask the professor, my white bass fishing friends. The white bass run was almost non-existent this year. It was a total bummer.
Oh, no.
And so to go catch some bass of some kind in a crazy thing was actually a real pleasure. And then last but not least, I got to tell you, Clay, I got invited or asked to do a fishing clinic on Saturday. And I couldn't be more excited because ever since I became a certified basic angler instructor for the Kansas Department of Wildlife and Parks, I've been dying to get out and do some of that, because you know how I love kids and I love, like all fishermen, I love being the old wise guy that has all the answers, even though I have basically none of the answers. I can certainly seem that way, and I can't wait to go out and do this clinic. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Awesome. Sounds like you had a really good time. That clinic will be a good time. Where's the clinic happening?
It's happening at Cedar Lake in Olathe. It's Vamos a Pescar. It's targeted at Latin folks. There's still like 16, 17 spots left. So if you're around Olathe, Kansas, anywhere, and you want to come on over, we'll show you some things about fishing. And then for the last hour or two of the clinic, we actually go down and do some fishing at Cedar Lake in Olathe, Kansas.
Good to have a clinic that ends with actual real fishing. I like that. That's cool. Well, so as we mentioned, I just got back from vacation in Folly Beach, South Carolina, just outside of Charleston. Big red drumfish fishery down there. Lots of sea trouts, tons of sharks. And so I spent a day. I wanted to spend one day sun up to sundown fishing one spot to see how I could do. And I put together a little audio journal. This is at the Folly Beach Pier in Folly Beach, South Carolina. Now in the South, all over the South, on the ocean, they have these giant piers for fishing, which I just think are wonderful because it allows the average person to get into some good water. You know, if they don't have boats and stuff like that, casting from shore is hard in the ocean. So I spent a day on the pier, and my goal was to catch a mess of seafood to eat for a couple days later. So I brought I didn't bring my recorder with me. I forgot it. So I recorded everything on my iPhone, which considering came out okay. So
it did. I couldn't, because I was wondering where your cat was.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about Clay's kitty cat.
The dead cat.
The dead cat. And,
which breaks the wind. I didn't have that.
It breaks the wind, but you managed quite well.
Yeah, there's a little bit of noise in the segment because it's real life, but it's good. I met some interesting people on the pier. You'll hear them in the piece. And so I'm not going to talk too much about it. I'm going to let it kind of speak for itself. So here's my day on the Folly Beach Pier in South Carolina. Well, all right. Clay Groves here for Fish Nerds. Sunrise here at Folly Beach, South Carolina. Here, I think it's the 22nd of April. I'm at the Folly Pier, brand new pier here in South Carolina. Gonna do some pier fishing throughout the day. The sun came up a few minutes ago. I went to Wally World and bought a Shakespeare combo, cheap one, $45. It's called the Catch More Fish combo from Shakespeare, and it came with supposed to come with all kinds of fishing equipment. Just opened up the fishing kit it came with, and it was filled with Berkeley Gulp Live outfishes all of their baits, and just a little tiny bit of terminal gear. I thought I had a lot more in there, so for my money, I thought I get more terminal gear. But I'm going to tie some of this gear on. And on my other rod, I've got a lightweight surf casting, a lightweight bass rod that I'm going to put a sabiki rig on and try to jig up some bait and see what we can catch. I have no idea what we're going to catch today, but I'll report back with this audio journal. All right, diary entry number 2. I got my first line in the water using this Shakespeare kit. I have no idea if I did it right. Had a pyramid sinker on a slider, and then like 3 hooks all guaranteed to tangle with each other. I can't imagine this not ending up as a mess, but I've got for bait on there, I've got 1 piece of shrimp on 1 hook, and then a squid on the 2 other hooks. And it's fishing right in the bottom, right next to the pier, hoping for some fish that's swimming through there to say, hey, look, free food. And they're going to go for it. So while this is going, I'm going to tie up a sabiki, try to jig up some live bait. All right, so I just checked my weird rig on this Shakespeare with all those hooks and bait I put on there. I've been watching it the whole time while I've been tying my sabiki onto my other rod. Didn't see a movement at all. Pulled it up. My bait is completely stripped clean on there. So I'm going to drop my sabiki rod in that spot. I bet there's a bunch of tiny fish down there waiting for me. Can't wait. All right, just dropped that sabiki down. Got slammed by whiting, like a little 5-inch whiting. So I grabbed a couple of those and put them on my bigger rig out into the deep. Now we wait. I guess that's the whole game of pier fishing, is waiting. I'm going to jig a bunch of whiting up just for funsies and put a crab pot out so we can get some blue crab while I'm at it. I'm not going to catch a bucket of whiting. I'm just going to, if I catch them for bait, I'm going to catch, use, release the rest just for funsies. All right, still at it here. All right, fish nerds, time for an update. Been out here fishing on Folly Pier, about 4 hours in now. Got about 20 whiting, like 7 or 8. They call them sand perch. I'm not sure if that's a real name or what people are just calling them. Well, I got a fish on right now. One, I think I got a fish. No, I got a bite, but no fish. And one little tiny speckled sea trout. So that's it. Pretty slow, but fun. Beautiful weather. Keeping at it.
Still got some bait on.
All right, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon, been out since like 7 this morning. Still at Folly Pier, Folly Beach in South Carolina. I probably caught, I lost track of how many, they call them sand perch. I doubt that's a real name. Probably about 12 to 15 whiting, a couple of bluefish, and two small to keep sea trout, spotted sea trout. Bumped into Austin. Hi, Austin.
Hi, Clay.
How old are you?
I'm 28.
And from Louisville?
Louisville, Kentucky.
Louisville, Kentucky. And you're out here on Folly Pier. How you been doing?
Doing well. It's a lot better day out here today than yesterday.
Actually, it was cold.
Cold and probably about twice as much wind. So actually able to fish today.
Right. What have you caught?
A bunch of whiting, a bluefish, I think is what they're called, and a pompano, which was far too small to keep. But
You got a pompano?
yeah, very pretty.
They're so cool. All right. What's your technique here?
So I've got a Carolina rig.
Because of course you do.
Because, we're in South Carolina, and it's what I know, being from freshwater. And I didn't want to rent a rig from the store, so
Sure.
I brought my own with me. Just putting some shrimp on there. I have a buddy in, Bradenton, Florida, who taught me how to hook a shrimp last year. So I've been shrimp fishing, but just put on some squid and doing well with that too. So.
You were doing shrimp fishing using a circle hook, which I struggle with. And I've actually been, last time I complained about circle hooks, I got so many phone calls to the Fish Nerds hotline, which by the way is 607-378-FISH, about how I'm wrong about circle hooks. I can't catch a freaking fish on a circle hook. What am I doing wrong?
It's a different kind of technique, especially if you've been raised with anything other than a circle hook. Like
I'm raised to set the hook when I feel a nibble.
I used to get on, so my wife and I, we started off fishing together, and I used to get on her for not jerking. You got to jerk. You got to really pull that rod.
I tell my wife to pull my rod too.
No comment. But circle hook technique, it's the opposite of that. You just sort of start reeling, and I've lost some though where I didn't reel fast enough, so I didn't set it. I got it in their cheek but didn't pull it through.
So when you get a nibble on the circle hook, you just start reeling in.
Start reeling, and once you have some weight on there, you really start reeling.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah.
I gotta practice.
That's all the wisdom I got on it.
Just time with the gear, probably, huh?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so you're from Louisville. What's your favorite fishing back home?
I'd like to fish at Rough River. They have a great largemouth bass population. Actually, a couple of years ago, caught a about 25-pound flathead catfish out of there while bass fishing. So lots of... Oh, not that time.
Got a bite.
How
many of those have you had today?
Oh, my gosh. About 40 more than the fish I've caught.
Yeah.
So, or more times, rather. But, yeah, no, lots of good... freshwater fishing back home, and a couple big lakes too. Kentucky Lake is a good one I like to go to when I can. They have monster catfish, and just everything else is a size up. But yeah,
I'd love to get down to Louisville and do some fish. Up in New Hampshire, our bass, our catfish are all like maybe half the size what you guys see.
And then you get down to like Charleston or Florida, and you see bass that are twice the size of what we got there.
Yeah, well, they like the warm water, and we have ice up here. So
yes, yeah, that's something I've always wanted to do is the ice fishing.
If you make your way to New Hampshire, you look me up, I'll take you out.
I'll let you know, Clay. Absolutely. Thank you.
There's some bass through the ice. It'll be fun.
Yeah, hell, man. I don't care if they're, if it's through the ice, it could be whatever size.
All right, well, get after these fish. Thanks for chatting with me.
Absolutely, Clay. Appreciate you.
Perfect. All right. It's 4:48 in the Folly Pier. Been here all day. And I bumped into these two folks from South Carolina, Randy and Clayton. Randy, how's it going?
It's going great, man. What's happening?
Well, I'm having a good time fishing with you and Clayton. Clayton, how's it going?
Doing good. Having fun.
Doing good. All right. And so, how's the fishing been, Clayton?
It's been pretty good. It's been fun, relaxing. Definitely relaxing. It's beautiful out here.
What'd you catch?
We caught some whiting and some sea trout and a couple of blackbirds.
Those birds have been stealing bait. I bet they taste delicious.
Listen, Clayton, you want truth or you just want me to talk trash? Here's the truth.
I'll take both.
The truth is, my doggone line got messed up while I was talking with y'all about chasing hogs and deer. And
It's our fault.
Yes, it was your fault. And I'm claiming solidarity with nature on this one because I ain't going to catch no fish if I keep this up.
You better get that knot tied on there, man. You having a good day?
Yeah. Having a good day. I'm watching Clayton catch all the fish, and I'm feeling bad. But you know what? It ain't so bad because he told me I could have the fish.
Good. You're bringing a mess home?
I'm going to bring a mess home. If I can talk him into cleaning them, I'll get him to clean them. But I doubt that. I guess I'll be doing it.
I just cleaned a whiting, which I'm planning on eating.
Would you show me how?
I don't know how to do it. I just cut it.
I didn't ask if you knew how. I just asked you to show me how.
Just treat it like a fish. Cut the meat off it. Ain't that complicated? All right, Clayton, what do you do for work?
I'm a pastor.
Yeah, I guessed that when I met you.
Yeah.
I was thinking.
I also work at a pizza place.
Do you?
Because pastors don't pay a whole lot of money.
I get it. I work as a DJ and a fishing guide. We all work extra jobs.
Yes, that's right.
I was talking to my wife. She's over there right now, and I was talking to her. I said, I would go to Clayton's church.
Well, thank you.
You were telling that story earlier to me about the hog and stuff, and I was thinking, man, I can listen to you talk all day.
Oh, I got some good stories.
I bet you do.
The Lord has been really good to me.
Awesome. Hopefully, it's good to use fishing today.
It has been great.
Yeah.
We caught fish.
That's something. All right, Clay. It's been nice meeting you today.
Nice meeting you, Clayton.
All right. Sun's about to go down. We're still on the Folly Pier. I'm joined by Mrs. Chief Executive Fish Nerd. Hi, Kristen.
Hi.
What do you think of this Folly Pier fishing day? Got out here at sunrise, sunset now.
You've been having a good time.
It's true. I've been having a great time. Fish have not enjoyed me.
I haven't seen you catch any.
Yes, I'm going to catch two.
Those were not really fish.
They don't count. Those were so-called sand perch. I'm not sure it's their real name. And they're so tiny.
Very small.
But they croak.
They made nice sounds, I guess.
They do make nice sounds, yeah. But anyway, so we did it. We did a whole day. I've not been inside at all, in any building at all, except for Taco Boy.
Don't tell the world about Taco Boy.
It's a secret, Taco Boy. Don't go there. All right, well, we're going to wrap this up with probably caught 50 or 60 fish of the day, but nothing of note. A couple of big bluefish. A couple of bluefish are bigger than the tiny fish I've been catching. And I kept one whiting for dinner. You're going to eat a whiting.
Hooray.
Hooray. But tomorrow we're going crabbing. And it's going to happen, Kristen. It's going to happen.
It's amazing.
Okay, that's it. Folly Pier, done. Now, as you can tell, John, you'd love it. It'd be your kind of day.
Yeah, I would love it.
Yeah. And I ended up not keeping I only kept one fish the whole day. I wish I caught a bluefish. I should have kept him as well. But I only kept one whiting the whole day. And I caught a whole bunch of them. Only got one whiting that was kind of worth keeping. It was about 11 inches long. Most of the whiting I caught were pushing in at around 6 inches, a really small whiting.
Uh-huh.
I caught several speckled sea trout, which some people call weak fish, depending on where you live. And they're very delicious, but they have to be 16 inches to keep, and mine were all like 7, so not worth the hassle. And then on the pier, in the piece, you heard me talk about a fish called a sand perch. And I did mention in the piece, I don't think that's the real name of the fish. I did do some research later, and the local name for that fish that people know is called a croaker, because when you catch them, they sound like they're croaking. Just a little tiny silver fish, like 5 inches long. I caught dozens and dozens of those things, and they're bait stealers.
Yeah, they're the bait. So, they're the bait stealers. All right. There's no bait fishing trip is complete without some bait snatchers giving you a hard time.
Right, but you catch 3-4 at a time on a sabiki rig, and they feel like bigger fish, so it's worth it.
Well, I love that piece for so many reasons. I love the folks you talk to.
Mm-hmm.
Sound like some real colorful characters. That makes it fun to be out there. People are, tend to be friendly, tend to want to.
Well, because they're not catching anything, so they're going to chat.
Yeah, maybe. Now, I've got one question that's a complete 90-degree turn,
sure.
So don't be upset with me. But you went to the taco place and I saw a picture of your taco. It looked more like a hamburger to me.
Oh, I went to a place called Taco Boy. And I did. By the way, the picture you saw was not from Taco Boy. That was my lunch. There's a restaurant on the pier.
Oh, okay.
I had a hamburger, but we went out for dinner. I did take a break from the pier to go get dinner at a restaurant called Taco Boy, and I did have a fish taco there. So
okay,
and it was very, very good. And they had $5 margaritas. I might have had several before I went back to the pier to catch the sunset and fish some more.
Okay.
So, yeah. So that answers your question. Yeah. So you're right. You're right. It did look like a hamburger because it was a hamburger. And I actually didn't even buy that. My father-in-law came out to the pier, and while I was fishing, went to the restaurant on the pier and got me that and brought it out to me. So, yeah. And a beer. Wow, they sell beer there too. So it's perfect.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But Folly Beach.
All my dreams are going to come true.
Yeah. Folly Beach. I highly recommend if you get a chance to go down there, check it out. It's a fun little town. And just 4 restaurants. It's small and great. So good stuff.
Well, can I ask you one nerdy question, little history nerd?
Mm-hmm.
Folly is kind of an old fashioned word in my mind. And is it called the Folly River because it was a big cove in the ocean and a lot of boats went up there expecting there to be a river running into it, and they were like, "This is Folly." No,
I was staying on the Folly River, which is not even close to being a river by any definition.
Okay.
the Folly so let me describe it. The Folly River separates the mainland from Folly Island. Right. Folly Island's in the ocean, and so on the other side of Folly Island, between mainland and island, is the strip of water between the mainland and the island. They call that the Folly River. So it's open on both ends of the ocean.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what isn't the East River off Manhattan in New York? Isn't that the same deal?
Thing.
Oh.
Yeah.
All righty. Okay. Well, now I'm clear on it. I just had this idea of the early colonists coming in here and going, "There's no river here. This is Folly."
Right. And usually when I fish in the Folly River, I catch tons of redfish, like as many as I want.
Really?
I couldn't pay those fish this year.
Well,
doing all this stuff, all my tricks in the most basic stuff, shrimp on a hook, whatever I could do, but nothing worked. So,
well, maybe they weren't in yet or something like that.
Oh no, everyone else seemed to be catching them. It was
you are an honest man.
It was me. All right, let's get into some fish in the news because everyone loves fish in the news.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
They sure do.
They sure do. All right, get after it, John. You got the first story here.
Okay, we're going to start off with one of our friends of the pod. She's not a big time fisher, but she supports fishing because she realizes that our licenses and our excise tax and so forth goes to paying for a lot of the places where she likes to hike and mountain bike and trail bike and do her thing. But anyway, our friend that we've had on Fish Nerds, and I've been on her show too, Meg Carney of the Outdoor Minimalist Podcast, did a 10-part series on forever chemicals, PFAs. And in April, this little podcast went viral, kind of set the podcasting world afire, at least if you're in your niche of environmental concern. It was the #1 chemistry podcast for 2 weeks. It was amongst the top 20 science podcasts in the U.S. for the month of April. It got a homepage feature on Apple Podcasts, which helped it to boost it, and so that it got this other recognition. And it was at number 23 in climbing when I last talked to Meg on Apple Science Podcast. So check out the Outdoor Minimalist. If you want to check out her 10-part series on forever chemicals, go to the outdoorminimalist.com/forever chemicals. We'll have links in the show notes, but this is mainly a shout out to our friend Meg Carney. Congratulations for creating a piece that people caught on to and on a very important topic. So
I'm always curious. I'm always curious because I do a lot of looking into stats on podcast listeners and stuff and how it's figured out. And so I'm going to give people some insider information. John, do you know how you rank in podcast on the podcast ranks on Apple Podcasts? Do you know how they choose those?
I have no idea.
So I do. And it has nothing to do with how many listeners you have. It's unrelated, completely unrelated. It's how many new subscribers do you have or new followers do you have in a certain period of time. That period of time is undefined. So, for example, we gamified this once. We went to a conference and I gave Fish Nerds stickers out to anyone who could show me on their phone that they were subscribed to the Fish Nerds podcast. And by the next day, we were the #1 fishing podcast or outdoor podcast on the internet. And we had less than 200 listeners. Whereas we know the big shows have tens of thousands, right? So it's hard to measure what that means when you're #1 in your space in the podcasting world. It's not what you think it is. So I'm super curious what her numbers actually were. You get a bump. You have to bump.
Okay, so so what are you're raining on me here?
I'm just curious. I'm just curious.
Wet blanket on.
I'm not wet blanketing. I'm just curious. I just want to know because I want to know because we never get the numbers that I feel like we should be getting for downloads. And so I'm always like, well, what are they getting? What do the real numbers look like? So I'm always curious. The median podcast gets about 120 downloads per 30 days. So most podcasts get less than 120 listens per month. So I'm always curious where people land in that spectrum of podcasts. If you get over 1,500, you're in the top 20% of all podcasters.
Wow. Well, yeah, I know we do better than 120.
We do well over that.
We're way over that, but
we took years and years of work. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, you know what? But we have a lot of fun, and the folks that are here are fantastic.
But here's the way to look at it, John. Let's say you're getting 120 people listening per month to your podcast. If you were doing a live presentation someplace and every single month, 120 people show up in a room to hear you speak, that's amazing.
That is.
So it's still amazing if they're a podcast audience.
It is.
So to kind of look at, and that's a lot of people. Nice people who care about what you're saying and are great. So anyway, congratulations. I don't mean to rain on. I just get curious. That's all.
I know. I'm just teasing, Clay. I
feel bad now, John.
I just like Meg so much, and when I
do too.
Got this news from her about all of her hard work on the forever chemicals, because they really have me concerned, and
as it should.
As it should, and we are not that sort of podcast. Although I know one of her shows is about outdoor clothing and how you can be more conscious of the brands and the materials that PFAs are involved in their manufacture, because that's where Meg, that's what she's all about is knowing what you're buying. This is the new way, or maybe not, I shouldn't call it the new way, but this is one way, actionable way you can help the environment is know what you're buying and buy stuff that's better for the environment than not so much.
Right. Man, it's tough. It's tough to get it all right. So a little effort goes a long way.
That's right.
All right. Well, congratulations. That's awesome. I'll have to take a listen to that series too. I haven't heard it yet.
I haven't heard them all yet, but yeah, it's definitely worth a listen.
Awesome. All right. What's next, John?
Oh man, I love this one. This is one you sent in, and I just love this. This said, "You want to do it? You want me to do it?" This one's great.
Oh yeah. Well, this is actually Blu Jay. My kid sent this to me, and she said, "Dad, have you seen this news?" And I said, "No." And Blu Jay said, "Well, Garfield phones have been washing up on beaches for years and years and years, and nobody knew where these Garfield phones were coming from. It's a 35-year-old mystery." And this news story is actually about 5 years old. So I'm late to the table with it, but I still felt it was worth sharing with people. And you heard about this too?
Only because of Blu Jay, because but I am tickled pink with it because our daughter, we bought her when we were out at a flea market or an antiques venue or something with mom. My wife Kathy's into picking and antiques and vintage and stuff. Well, our little girl Sarah saw a Garfield phone and she wanted one, and we got it for her, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, so this happens. So a French coastal community has had to crack this mystery behind the Garfield phones that have plagued beaches for years, for decades, 35 years. Since the 1980s, the Irois coast of Brittany has received a supply of bright orange landline novelty phones that look like Garfield. And anti-litter campaigners have been trying to figure out where they come from. They're collecting the feline parts for years, and they couldn't even find it. But the source of the problem has been found. It was a lost shipping container. So back in 2019, campaigners from our Villain Sue anti-litter group made the novelty phone a symbol of the plastic pollution on those beaches. It was showing off the problem with using Garfield. So it's a cute 80s collectible. You can look on eBay. They're worth quite a bit of money now.
Yeah, they are, and I love the way they were found because this made me feel important as a quasi journalist, because the guy that figured it out was a local farmer that remembered, hey, way back in the 80s, remember when that we found that shipping container in that grotto, and he goes, I wonder if those phones were in there.
Yep, and sure enough, it was. It turned out there's a tide there, a cave that's only accessible during low tide, and it was just full of phones.
It is so crazy.
It's really that's so crazy. Yeah. It's really that simple, but it's really funny too.
And I didn't do that right, did I? I mean, I did that Midwestern. I should have been like, we remember that the container washed off a ship back in the 1980s when I was raising leeks, and I also was doing endive, which is what you call endive, and I remembered the phones that started washing ashore.
And how do you say? And how do you say Garfield?
And we'd say it is our magical friend Garfield.
Garfield. Anyway, cute story there. Just fun, stupid throwaway story, but I had to share it because I never heard this story. I love the idea of a mystery Garfield phone just constantly showing up like another Garfield phone. What is going on? And
I know it was irritating the heck out of those beach cleaners, and hats off to them for cleaning the beach. But I mean, really, it's just like Garfield again.
Yeah. So Garfield again. I love that stuff like that. And it kind of makes me want to sneak a Garfield phone on a beach every month for a couple of years. And it's not coming from anywhere but me. Just want to put it on the beach. Another Garfield phone. So yeah, it seems like a prank. That's nature's prank, I guess. All right, John. In other news,
you're a prankster. You're a prankster.
Other news is kind of a downer news. So last month, or whatever, last episode, we did a story on biodegradable plastics like fishing gear and stuff like that. And you and I had a small discussion about how I don't think they break down so well in the environment. Eric Hoff, who runs Manga Bay and a podcaster as well, listens to our show. Hi, Eric. And sent in an article, a really dense Manga Bay news article about he called it a panacea of plastics, saying a lot of the bioplastics contain thousands of unknown chemicals. And we don't know the environmental impact they're going to be having on the food we eat and, in the environment around us. I'm not going to read the article to you because it's so dense. But I will share a link in the show notes so people can read it if they want to.
Yeah, and it really is. And it was very kind of crushing to me because I'm always looking for that panacea. Mm-hmm. And I'm really looking into, because when we get glass water where we want glass water, we're going to carry everything environmentally conscious and fishing, not just lead-free stuff. And I'm, was thinking, we'll carry, the biodegradable bio line. And now I'm not so sure But I think the discussion here, Clay, is what do we do with these halfway solutions?
Well, I think a halfway solution is halfway. So that's still progress as far as I'm concerned. I hear friends who like complain about electric cars not being perfect yet. Oh, they caught on fire or the battery dies in the cold. I'm like, yeah, but nothing's perfect. Like you're still driving a car. Your car breaks down. You hate all cars because your car breaks down. You fix it, figure it out. So I think with bioplastics, we know there's a problem with them. This helps us. Knowing that the problem is really helpful. It's not a downer. Now we have a problem that we can work on a solution to. So I think it gets better, not worse, when you know stuff.
Okay, well, stop just a minute, man, because you've just, you know how my brain works. I'm picturing you in this flaming car going, I don't care. It's electric. I'm doing the right thing.
Right. It's going to get better, I promise.
But it's going to get better. Somebody help me.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I get out of this, a lot of people say, well, we get halfway, then everybody goes, oh, the scientists have done it again. Problem solved. We can go back to the beach and play volleyball now, and not think about these things. And what's your position on that?
On volleyball? I support it.
No. The point is, like, some people we get, say we've got to be careful when we come up with halfway solutions.
Well,
like the guy that invented the submarine that was going to clean all of the plastic bottles out of the ocean, and people go, we're all down on it because they're like, oh, that's just making the illusion of cleaning it up. The problem is way more than that. And I was I don't think that's a stopping point.
So I think the problem is overwhelming for some people. You see how big the problem is. And so you see a solution that maybe attacks a small percentage of the problem as a non-solution, as opposed to, well, we've made progress. You're going in the right direction. And I think the more you learn about it, the more in that direction you go, the better off we are. So I don't see this as a negative. I think as a good thing. I think we should keep pushing in that direction.
I agree. I mean, I tend to agree. I think there's always, the contrarian, and there's always the other side, and it bears discussion. But, if I look at one of those little plastic straws that they're using to protect the coral from the parrotfish, and if that gets into something, at least it's going to biodegrade, or at least they will biodegrade to where they're not stuck up a turtle's nose or what have you. And I'm not, I'm not trying to be funny here, but I guess that's just the way my mind works. But yeah, the thing is, even if BioLine takes 7 years to completely biodegrade and get out of the harm's way of birds and critters running around on the shore, that's better than a certain amount of film. It can take, they say to completely biodegrade takes 500 years.
Right. That's better. 5 years.
That's a lot better.
Yeah. We'll call that improvement. Anyway, it'd be good to get Eric. If you're listening, reach out to me. If you want to come on the show and do a deeper dive on this, we'd love to have you on. So reach out and we'll get you on.
Indeed.
Yeah. Because I'd love to talk to someone who knows it well. I read this article and it's so dense that I'm like, I'm gonna go. I feel like littering after reading it. That's how dense it is. So, and I love Manga Bay. They do good work over there.
They are wonderful. But yeah. Well, gotta be places for the smart people that want to go deep, and the super nerds like us that want to go deep. This just doesn't happen. Bioplastics is part of what we do, but it's only a small part.
Sure.
Okay. Now
keep going.
Let's keep going, because you know what? We're back on a crime thing.
Crime.
Magnet fishers helping to solve crimes. This is crazy.
You've done a magnet story like the last 3 episodes. You're just going down this rabbit hole.
Well, it's incredible because they just keep popping up, and I guess that must mean I'm being watched by a robot somewhere.
Yep, you're part of the algorithm.
There we go. They keep popping these magnet fishing things in front of me on my news feed on my phone. But magnet fisher uncovers rifle, cell phone, and so forth linked to couple's 2015 deaths in Georgia. And what happened is in Horse Creek, a couple of guys found a rifle, a 22 caliber rifle, or it says a person, not a couple of guys, but found a rifle and then found a bag containing driver's license, credit cards, and cell phone belonging to a couple that died in January 2015. Now, the rifle didn't belong to them, but the bag with their credit cards and cell phone and so forth did. And this couple was El Ray Bud Runyon and his wife June Runyon. They died because they answered an ad from Ronnie J. Towns, who had advertised a car for sale, and this Mr. Runyon was into some antique cars, was looking for an antique car to restore, and he went on down to look at this car. Well, it was a baited a situation where this guy was a scumbag. Ronnie's a scumbag. Ronnie robbed him. Ronnie got rid of him, and Ronnie is going to go to jail for doing it. They've got a pretty tight case on old Ronnie. They've been trying to get him in jail for a while, but with the pandemic and appeals and this and that and the other thing, getting him put in jail for good has taken a while. But the prosecutor was delighted to have this other evidence.
Sure.
Because this makes sure that no kind of jury nonsense or any kind of defense notion and defense motion nonsense gets in the way. But you lure somebody down with the promise of a 1966 Ford Mustang, which anybody would love to have, and do something like this. I don't know. What do you think, Clay? Criminals are pretty dumb, aren't they?
To do a crime like that, there's a certain level of dumb you have to have. So I have
dumb
no
and depravity. All of it. But I mean, to leave a trail, an internet trail of baiting people and so forth. I think Ronnie, that he was going to get caught was a pretty foregone conclusion, but
he was
we're
like,
glad.
but I cleared my internet history and I cleared my cookies.
Well, we all, if you're a Dateline head like me, you'll see how many times internet history comes back to bite somebody. But anyway, another magnet fisher comes to the rescue, and they're out there doing it. And believe me, this is only scratching the surface. You go on YouTube and you will find video after video after video. I found a loaded machine gun. I found a knife. I found this. I found that. So
right. Well, and some of them are genuine, and some of them I see fakes. I see them trying to get. Just it's like everything else on the internet. Like so many fake things out there to try to get people to click that like button and get more subscribers and all that stuff. And
well, there's always going to be the fake it till you make it crowd, but that's not what you're going to get here. This is reality.
Usually. All right, cool.
All right.
One more story here, John. Let's go.
Last but not least, we are going to talk about Lake of the Woods sturgeon. Lake Sturgeon in the Rainy River, which feeds Lake of the Woods, which is half in the U.S. and Minnesota and half in Canada. It is a great place to go fish for sturgeon, but some environmental groups kind of got into this and want sturgeon protected everywhere and don't particularly want people fishing for them at all anywhere. And so they tried to get the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to put the sturgeon on the endangered species list, which would take the management of sturgeon populations out of the hands of the state DNRs and into the hands of the Fed. And this gentleman, Joe Henry, wrote an opinion piece on it, got proactive, contacted people both on the state level and the federal level, like Amy Klobuchar and his Congressman Pete, name escapes me, but we're going to have Joe up here in a few minutes to talk more about this. And I'm not going to tell you what the upshot is. I'm just going to say that Joe makes a really good case. I've got two articles here for you to read. One's Joe's opinion piece. The other one is from the Grand Forks Herald, which is a more in-depth dive into it. You have to sign up for the Herald to read it, but it's free. And then you can just unsubscribe from the email. Yeah, Clay, it's a really good thing because I think the case that Joe makes is great, that the local DNR is more dialed in on this species, more aware of what's actually going on with this species, and the local DNR is not predisposed to not like anglers either. Right.
I mean, I would say if it really is endangered, do it, but let's find out the details and data first. Let data drive it, the information, not people's just, I think they're cute fish. I'm it's like for me, when I first see anyone catching a sturgeon, my first instinct is stop it, because in some places they are really endangered, really are rare. But we forget how big the world is and how populations vary from place to place. So,
and that's exactly
interesting nuance there, John, for sure.
Well, that's just it. My whole thing is that we are getting sophisticated enough as a society. Let's look at the good side of all this technology and stuff that we are very concerned with in terms of fakery and this. But on the other side, wow, do we ever have data? And data not, like never before. And when, there's a national crisis like the elimination of songbirds, for example, that was at the turn of the century is when people started recognizing the idea that songbirds were being, just eliminate a shot or this or that, unnecessarily, and we were losing our songbirds. These are migratory animals, and they go from state to state, and so a federal protection was what was called for.
Sure.
And there are times where the giant apparatus works, but we can focus and we can do this. And the more precise the lens, which would be your local state DNR, the better off you are, I think, in some cases. And this is one of them. So enough said. Sit tight. We're going to listen to the man himself. Please get ready to hear from the executive director of Lake of the Woods Tourism, Joe Henry. Hello, Fish Nerd Nation. Thank you for dropping by Glasswater Angling World Headquarters podcasting studio. Today, I am excited to have an outdoor writer in the interview chair that comes to us by way of correspondent Tim Bete. Not only is this gentleman a devoted fisher and accomplished storyteller, but he has his finger on the pulse of all things outdoors in the great outdoor recreation state of Minnesota, and he is the executive director of Lake of the Woods Tourism. Please give a big Fish Nerds welcome to Joe Henry.
That is an awesome introduction. I'll tell you, my former football coach used to say about an introduction like that, geez, at least I could have the decency to be dead.
That's hilarious. Right. Well, Joe, we had this great story, your opinion piece turned into us by Tim, and I found it fascinating. And I also found the tone of it to be really appealing because it was reasonable and thoughtful, and you make a great case. We just did the story on Fish in the News. I'm going to read the headlight. Yes. No, I'm going to read the headline from the Grand Forks Herald. Future. Oh, I'm off to a good start, Joe, but you're the wordsmith. I'm just a guy trying to run a podcast. Future of Lake Sturgeon management hangs in the balance as feds consider Endangered Species Act listing, and upcoming deadline results from a 2018 petition filed by the Center for Biological Diversity requesting that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service list Lake Sturgeon for federal protection. Well, Joe, you have come down squarely on the side of the Minnesota Department of Natural Resources in that you say we don't need U.S. FWS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, to come in and manage these because your state DNR is already doing an outstanding job. And you make a terrific case for it. What are we talking about here?
So Lake of the Woods is located up in Minnesota, and we're right up on the Canadian border. So we're that little tip that sticks up into Canada, right? We're right on the border with Canada. And we have a very, very robust lake sturgeon population. Our lake sturgeon have just exploded. And, give you a little history, back in 1897, for about 5 years there, they used to commercial net sturgeon. And they would get sturgeon like you wouldn't believe. And when they would do it, what they would do is they would harvest the sturgeon for the purpose of the roe of the caviar. And steamships would pick up that caviar and ship them across the lake up onto the Canadian side, which was like 80 miles away, to Kenora, Ontario. And then from Kenora, the railroad lines would reach the bigger cities in the eastern part of the United States, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, etc., where there was a very good demand for caviar. So early on, they used to, and when they harvested these sturgeon, what they do is they'd slice them right down the guts. They'd get the roe out and they'd throw them, pile them up like cordwood. In fact, I heard stories of some people would actually take those discarded sturgeon carcasses and burn them for fuel or for heat. So that was then, and that, of course, that really put a dent in the old sturgeon population. In addition, we believe that the majority of the sturgeon spawning happens in one of the tributaries that leads into Lake of the Woods called the Rainy River. Back in the day, there still is a paper mill upstream on Rainy Lake, and it's right at the dam. So the dam holds back the water on Rainy Lake, and then that water comes out of that dam, and that forms the Rainy River, which is our border between the U.S. and Canada. The Rainy River flows about 60 miles straight west, and then it turns north at the town of Bete and goes 12 more miles and feeds Lake of the Woods. That was the main spawning grounds of the sturgeon. And back in the day, before the Pollution Control Act, the pulp coming out of that was just incredible. Like if you'd fish, as story would go, you'd have to reel up every minute or two to clean your line off. If you'd go to shore, there was areas where there'd be literally 3 feet of pulp that if you stepped off the boat, you'd sink 3 feet into pulp. The conditions were not good for sturgeon spawning. In fact, the DNR tells me they believe back then much of the sturgeon spawning happened up in tributaries of the Rainy River. That's where they'd go where the water was clean. So fast forward to today, there's no commercial fishing on Lake of the Woods on the Minnesota side anyway at all. On top of that, the Clean Water Act has kicked into place. Plus, they got teeth into the Clean Water Act. So that has cleaned up the river. The river is very clean now. And all of that has led to sturgeon rebounding and it's just exploding. The DNR has spent decades tracking sturgeon population and growth. And right now they estimate that from about Morrison, Ontario, down through the northwest angle of the basin and the Rainy River, there are approximately 100,000 sturgeon over 40 inches long. And that's a very conservative estimate. We have a very robust population.
Sorry to interrupt you, Joe.
Yeah.
But I just want to make sure we're clear. I know I said it in the intro and so forth, but we're talking about lake sturgeon. These are
lake sturgeon. Yep.
The biggies, the ones that we get these pictures out of British Columbia. We get these pictures from Lake of the Woods. We get these pictures from various places in Wisconsin. These are those honkers. This is the big one, correct?
Well, no, and they are big, but I will tell you that I believe, over in like the Colorado River, and I'm not sure, but over in Washington State, some of those big ones over there, where they get out of the boat and they have 3 people holding them, those might be white sturgeon.
Oh, okay.
But lake sturgeon, we're talking about getting up to, 110, 120 pounds. They get bigger, but that's kind of the size what we're looking at on the Rainy River, getting up to 100, 110, 120 pounds.
That's plenty. That's plenty for me.
Think about an average size sturgeon of about 40, 50, 60 pounds. I mean, that's a big fish.
It is a big fish. It really, really is. And yes, the numbers are exciting. We get so many gloom and doom, and we're in crisis as far as our Mother Earth is concerned, and it's very distressing. So when a story like this comes along, I just got to jump on it because it's great to hear about management success. And this is a combination of obstruction removal, Federal Clean Water Act coming into play, and so on.
Well, and also too, if I may, I
Sure.
would say this. I would also say the management aspect of it, understanding, the old saying, Stephen Covey talked about seek first to understand, then be understood. And truly understanding what's going on with the sturgeon population, and then having a season that mimics where you're at with your population. So right now, as we speak, we have a combination of a catch and release season, and we have a keep season. Bottom line is, if people want to catch a sturgeon and keep it, you're allowed 1 per calendar year. And that sturgeon has to be between 45 to 50 inches or 1 over 75 inches. You literally tag them like a deer, and then you have to register them so the DNR knows exactly how many are harvested. And they, for the allotment they believe can be harvested that won't even make a dent in the population, we don't normally only get about half of that allocation each year.
Wow, that is fantastic. And also kind of the unwritten thing, or the thing that's in the air, the spirit of this is that Minnesota anglers have major sturgeon pride, the way you tell it.
Oh yeah. And it's developed over the last couple of decades because of the resurgence of the sturgeon. Like, it wasn't there back 50 years ago, there just wasn't the sturgeon to catch, but now, yes, there is.
Well, that's fantastic, because so many things are, about, is the attitude there, is the public support there. And when you actually take pride in a fish, whether it's the Mainers up there with their brook trout or Kansans with our paddlefish, we get a pride around a species, then you get a lot more support for managing it, enhancing it, protecting it, because the public demand is there. What I really love about your writing is you're just talking common sense. And in this case, I wholeheartedly agree. But tell the listeners why the Minnesota DNR is better able to handle the sturgeon management rather than bring in the sometimes cumbrous apparatus known as the U.S. Fed Wildlife Service.
100%. And I'll tell you something. I'm not one to write a lot of opinion pieces. I really am not. But this one, I'll quote another one of my the guys that kind of taught me about growing up, Zig Ziglar, the old sales guru. And Zig Ziglar always talked about do the right thing. If you do the right thing, good things will happen. And I'll tell you something. That not listing lake sturgeon on the endangered species list is the right thing, and here's why. Our sturgeon population has rebounded tremendously. I mean, we are stripping eggs from sturgeon. We're putting them in other areas of Minnesota, as an example. The eggs go down to a hatchery in southern Minnesota. They grow little sturgeon, little ones, and then they put those little sturgeon into these other fisheries that they stock. They're starting to see those natural reproduction of sturgeon already. I mean, it's just incredible, and so things are just flourishing. If you would tell me, you got two things going on. You got politics, and then you have biology. And I want to, when we're talking about fish management, I want to talk about biology, not politics. The Center for Biological Diversity, as I understand it, is a very similar organization to something like the National Humane Society. I said, man, if we could get sturgeon on this list, we're an organization that it really isn't for hunting or fishing. Let's try to get sturgeon listed on this list, and there'll be no fishing of sturgeon. Well, if the DNR would come back and say, we see a little bit of a blip with our sturgeon. They're not growing as quickly as they should, or they're growing too quickly, which tells you the population is too low. Or if they say any kind of a blip at all, well, then I'd be the first one to say, hey, listen, maybe we need to take a look at our regulations and back off on fishing and or harvesting one per year per person, But that is not the case. They're saying, hey, listen, our population's on the rise, size structure is getting larger. Everything is looking up, and we got a very good handle on it. In fact, we're restocking other bodies of water. Politics versus biology. Biologically, everything is just fine. It's going great. Why would you want to screw it up and hand that over to the federal? The state of Minnesota, the Minnesota DNR, they study these sturgeon. They do test nettings. They tag thousands of sturgeon. They have all this data. They study them intimately. When you hand it off to a federal organization, no disrespect to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but they're not going to be dialed in on a state species on a certain body of water like our DNR can. So the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service actually came back and asked for information from the different states, natural resources offices. And I know the Minnesota DNR submitted tons and tons of information to them about, how they thought our sturgeon populations were throughout the state. And, between that and I'm also a believer in being proactive. So this is one of those things that just wasn't right. So I got Congressman Stauber involved. Congressman Stauber, Pete Stauber, he came up to one of our sturgeon fishing resorts and met with a couple who owned this little resort. The resort would probably go under if sturgeon fishing went away. He met with them, and then he did a video supporting that the state management of sturgeon population. Then I reached out to Senator Amy Klobuchar's office. Senator Klobuchar and two staffers met with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then she wrote a letter to them, trying to persuade them that, hey, listen, we believe that it's in the best interest of the population of sturgeon that the state manage it. And did those things make a difference? I don't know, but it certainly couldn't hurt.
It couldn't hurt, and they might open a letter from a senator or congressperson, maybe a little more than they from old crappie hippie here. You never know. But you gotta use your representatives, you put them to work. But this is what you get when things are more cooperative than confrontational. And it's like, yes. Look, U.S. Fish and Wildlife and Fish Services, do you really need another thing to do? Delegate, baby. We got this handled over here in Minnesota.
Well, and to their thing too, it wasn't something that they pursued. It was something that they were pushed by the Center for Biological Diversity. In fact, it's my understanding that they were getting sued by the Center for Biological Diversity to make a decision. So by June 30th, they had to make a decision because lawfully they were getting sued. And so they made a decision. They looked at all the facts and figures, and thank goodness that biology won out on this one. And again, I can tell you the anglers of Minnesota that love sturgeon, we want nothing more than a healthy population of sturgeon. And if that would ever change for any reason, and we had to stop catching sturgeon or angling for sturgeon, we'd be the first one to raise our hands and say, okay, it's going to be painful, but we need to stop her. But it is far from that.
Well, that is awesome to hear. And Joe, gosh darn it, you blew my punchline. You blew my big reveal, because the good news is that biology did win, and your efforts and the efforts of your representatives and the efforts of the average Minnesota angler that supports the sturgeon program and your DNR and some of these great people that work for your DNR, they won. But I am very glad. So congratulations there. But
thank you.
Also, talk to me about some winners, some mom and pop winners, some regular people winners because of this decision.
Yeah. So Kevin and Jen Henrik, they own the Royal Dutchman Resort, and Kevin's kind of positioned himself as a sturgeon aficionado. I mean, he came up to Lake of the Woods, and they bought this little resort. It's a little smallish hotel, kind of a boutique hotel right on the Rainy River, right in sturgeon country. And he came up with his eye on walleyes. But as he was here longer and longer, he got bit by that sturgeon bug. And, now, so he calls himself the Dutchman. His wife's the Duchess. When he goes out on his boat taking people sturgeon fishing, that's the warship. Whenever he catches a sturgeon, he howls loud as he can across the river. So now when people are going to the river and they see his warship, they'll howl back at him. He's got people, whenever they catch a sturgeon, they're hauling on the Rainy River. So whenever you hear a howl, somebody caught a lake sturgeon. I mean, it's just kind of a fun thing. But, he said that, sturgeon are a big enough part of my business now that if I would lose sturgeon fishing, I don't know that we could make a living here. I think we would probably go under, because I have positioned my business at sturgeon's it's kind of a niche business. He's a small business. He's a ways away from the lake where a lot of the walleye fishing goes on. So he's kind of developed this little niche. And, on Lake of the Woods on the Rainy River, we can fish sturgeon all the way through May 15th. Then it closes for about a month and a half. It closes till July 1st, gives those fish a chance to spawn. And then July 1st, it opens up all the way again till May 15th. So other than 1.5 months out of the year, you can fish sturgeon year round. So, he's out there in the summertime fishing them, and you're on a slow moving river. You got waterfall around you, different kind of waterfall. You got deer and bear. It's picturesque. And there's not many people on the river in the summer, and you're sitting back soaking worms. You go near a deep hole and you cast out worms with a sinker, and you sit back and you start chewing the fat and enjoying life, and you watch for that little rod tip just to bounce a little bit. That's all it takes. And, you could have a walleye, a bass, a sucker, an eel pout, or it could be a sturgeon. If it's a sturgeon, it could be a little one that have those real sharp scoops on the sides for protection still, or it could be a 110 pounder. You just never know.
Wow, that is fantastic. And that story is repeated according to your article. There's guys up there now selling sturgeon gear. There's guides up there for the sturgeon. So there's a lot of people starting to take the quote unquote new freshwater big game fish, because sturgeon fishing has literally exploded. And as a guy that's really into supporting indigenous and native species and diversifying what is known as a game fish into some species that were considered non-game, this excites the heck out of me, because not only are some people able to make a living doing what they love and being involved in fishing, which you and I both know is worthy of great love and attention and passion and a lot of advocacy. But we're getting changing a mindset about, what is a game fish? And it comes down once again, what turns you on, baby? Could be a bowfin, could be a carp, it could be a sturgeon. And very, very exciting to hear that lodges like the Dutchman and the Duchess are really getting some benefit out of this and working that what you call a shoulder season, because the day that the sturgeon closes, then the main walleye season opens. Is that correct?
That is right. Yeah. Yep. So our Minnesota fishing opener is May 11th. The sturgeon season goes through May 15th. So it's kind of a nice little transition. Of course, everybody, Lake of the Woods, the walleye capital of the world, with all due respect to other good walleye fisheries. But, the point of it is that people come to Lake of the Woods is to fish walleyes. Now, our sturgeon's picking up steam. Certainly there's a muskie. It's a huge muskie fishery. And there's pike and bass and everything else. But walleyes are the kind of the king. And the sturgeon thing is really a neat deal. And the whole thing is quite fascinating. You see them breaching out on the river. You'll be walleye fishing. You'll set the hook and it's like, okay, lift the anchor and let's follow this fish around. It's going to take you 45 minutes to an hour to get it in.
Yeah,
People are buying bigger tackle now, so you're buying the 60-pound test line, the great big fiberglass rods. Some people use catfishing gear. And then we use a sturgeon rig. So it's basically a sturgeon rig is simply a no roll sinker, a flat sinker that works good in current. And this year current's really low, so you could get away with a 2 or 3 ounce sinker. And then the sturgeon rig itself is an 18-inch lead of about 60-pound leader material. And then it uses about a number 3, 4, or 5/0 circle hook. And the reason you use a circle hook is because that circle hook, when you set the hook on a circle hook, you don't rear back on them, you reel tight. And the idea is that if that hook is down in their gullet a little bit because they've swallowed those glob and night crawlers, when you tighten up that line, that circle hook will slide all the way up to the mouth and it'll hook that fish in the mouth, which is a great conservation measure.
I'm going to ask you kind of a technical question here because besides the Center for Biological Diversity, there was the Fishable Indiana Streams for the Hoosiers, the Hoosier Environmental Council, which are both obviously Indiana. I think that's Hoosier country.
Yep.
And then Prairie Rivers Network, which is an Illinois organization. As I mentioned those other organizations, and they're not even Minnesota organizations. We're talking Indiana organizations, Illinois organizations.
But this was a national thing, though. This was a national, this would have been for the whole U.S.
Oh, yes, I understand that. Sometimes the blanket sort of coverage that the Fed provides, that's great when we're talking about songbirds and different things like that. There's reasons for it, and there's places where we need that kind of coverage and we need that kind of clout. But so if I'm sitting in somewhere where I see my sturgeon population isn't being managed properly, and we can rate DNRs, I'm not going to do it, but I'm just saying, there's funding, there's mission, attitudes about mission, there's priorities, there's things there. So let's say I'm somewhere, I'm in Indiana or Illinois, and maybe I'm concerned about the sturgeon population. What would you offer these people as far as able to get with their DNR to push them in that direction, or should they seek a political solution? I'm just saying, I happen to know that Minnesota is tops, and Wisconsin seems to be another state that is very, very active. I'm sure every DNR says we could stand to be more well-funded, but when you have states that are so outdoor oriented and fishing oriented, there's a lot of support for what they do. What about a person in a place that's less so? What can they do?
And I should mention too, Wisconsin was also very active in the fight to keep sturgeon regulated by a state. They have that Lake Winnebago system out there, and so they were part of this too. And there's probably other states also. But you asked me the question, who would I go to? I mentioned this earlier. Seek first to understand, then be understood. What I would first do is do homework, make sure that you have your ducks in a row as far as what is currently going on with the sturgeon population and what is going on with the sturgeon population in each individual body of water. For instance, in Indiana, since we use that example, once you get a good handle on that, I would communicate with the DNR folks in Indiana to find out what their perspectives are and what their plan is. But then if you have a big issue with the way things are being managed, I would go to the state legislature. Now, that's a state issue. So what I learned is the state legislature is very instrumental in passing a lot of these laws. Certainly the DNR is influential and they control some of the different legislation and laws and things that go through. But when it's all said and done, it's the legislature that has the hammer on it. Go to your legislatures, and if you have a viable case, that is one way to get things done. The other thing you can do is you can go to your federal representatives. Now, this might be a state issue. However, your federal representatives have relationships with your state representatives as well as the local, Department of Natural Resources, and they can be very influential, even though they are federal. But you got to make sure that you have your ducks in a row and you have a case. I would also reach out and try to be friends with your DNR and find out what their game plan is. Do you truly know what the populations are, and go from there? But that's where I would go.
Well, I think that's a great answer. And yeah, we've got some side issues, and we could go down all kinds. We could run up our tributaries all over the place on this, Joe. So, different cases and different things and what people think. And we have to work off facts. And I love the way you go about this. Understand, get your ducks in a row. All right, my brother, you've got 3 minutes. I love to give my guests the final word. Take a couple minutes to tell us on your mind or what you're looking forward to or what's coming up with Joe Henry. Shout out anybody you want to about this sturgeon program that has been instrumental and keep getting it rocking the way it is. You tell us where we can get information if we want to come get sturgeon, and finish up with your how we get hold of Joe through social media and so on. So got 2.5 minutes. Go.
All right, man. You know what? Well, first off, I would say this. All respects to the different organizations who have their different opinions, but please know that we want sturgeon to flourish just like everybody else does. And I can tell you that from an angling perspective, we're the first ones. It's just like hunters. People don't understand. Deer hunters, they'd be the first one to go out and save a deer in peril that's caught in a fence or whatever the case might be. It's the same thing with us. Most people don't harvest sturgeon. Some will because it's good. We don't eat them for table for every week. It's a delicacy. Some people harvest them. Most people is catch and release fishing. We talk about how to properly handle a sturgeon, having the proper equipment so you don't stress them out, you get them in quick, how to properly handle, have your phone ready, have your needle nose ready, how to support them horizontally, not vertically, because they're such a big fish. If you hold them vertically, just the weight of their internal organs could tear and you could injure the fish. But we really promote all of that. We want to do the right thing. And at the same time, this has become a tradition, a culture. For most people, this is going to be the biggest fish they catch in their life if they don't go to the ocean. They're bigger than muskies. And they're not that hard to catch. It's not like, we had a little media event here not too long ago. And you know what? We were catching 30 to 40 sturgeon per day per boat.
Whoa.
It's unbelievable. So I would say this, if you have an interest in coming up to Lake of the Woods and doing some sturgeon fishing, it's just gorgeous. You could combine that with a traditional walleye fishing trip and, have a fresh meal of walleyes when you're up here, come up to God's country. You know what? Check out our website. And we have all of our resorts, our guides. We have information on sturgeon fishing, and you can totally get hooked up. By the way, when you come up, you don't have to bring a boat. You can, but we got guides. You step on board. Everything is provided for you. Great accommodations. Our website, Lake of the Woods, MN for Minnesota. Lake of the Woods, MN.com. Everything is there. And of course, my name is Joe Henry. You can get a hold of me through Lake of the Woods Tourism. If I can ever do anything for you, all you got to do is reach out.
Awesome, Joe. Well, thank you for coming on the program today. It's been fantastic talking to you, and we will talk to you again, sir.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, Clay. Well, what did you think of that one? What do you think of Mr. Henry there?
I love nuanced conversations, John, and I think that gives me a lot to think about. And what it seems like a great guy, that Joe Henry. So leave it there for now. I need to process a bit.
Well, of course you need to process a bit because there's a lot there. And I've got some little bits and pieces that I cut out that we might run here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But he is a very good storyteller, a very rich conversation, and really really very reasonable. And that is why I pursued this, because as I said in the interview, I loved his tone in a time where there's a lot of people shouting and getting confrontational. And I'm not going to say right or wrong on this stuff. It's just refreshing for a person to take on an issue that's very, very important to them without getting too worked up about it. And I think you're going to find that a lot of times works better than the other way.
That's right. Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Joe, for giving time to the fish nerds. We love when smart people like Joe come on the show. So awesome stuff. All right. Got to move forward, John. We got more show to do.
We got some more show to do, and now we're going to have some real fun.
Right. Let's get into the culinary corner. I love that theme music. All right, John. So, John, when I was at Folly Beach, we were in the Folly River. I'm going to tell you a story about catching blue crab. After failing to catch enough food on the pier to feed everybody, I decided crabbing is going to be where it's at. So I have this big crab pot. It's huge. And there are laws in South Carolina. You can't drop giant crab pots. These are like